Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 53. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be doing an unaware team. And in case you need a quick summary of what the ability unaware does, is that it allows you to ignore the opponent's stat changes when taking or doing damage. So if the Pokemon has defense buffs, that means that whenever we're attacking the opposing Pokemon, we'll ignore those defense buffs. But if the opponent has attack buffs and they're attacking us, then we also get to ignore those attack buffs. And it also works for like accuracy and evasion, but those two don't come up very often. But this entire team is 4 of the best unaware users that we have in the game, and the only one that we couldn't use is Quagsire, mostly just because Quagsire would slap another water and ground type onto this team, which we already have 2 of those, so it's kind of repetitive. But starting off with Quagsire's cousin, we have Clodsire here, and Clodsire is good because it is a poison ground type, which means that we have a lot of attacking into a lot of things that are popular, like Incineroar and Goldango and Rillaboom. But Clodsire is nice because we get the Toxic Spikes option, which in combination with Dozo mode and all of our Pokemon that want to stick around for a long time, we're going to be able to set up Toxic Spikes turn 1, hopefully get 2 knockouts or force the opponent to switch, and then we can get some poison damage over time. And of course we have 2 stabs on Clodsire, being the Stomping Tantrum and the Poison Jab, and the Poison Jab allows us to have a 30% chance to poison whatever it's in, but it also lets us hit grass types for some good damage. And the Stomping Tantrum is mostly here just because we don't want to be earthquaking on this team, because there's a good number of Pokemon that don't enjoy the earthquake. But also if the opponent decides to fake out into Clodsire, then we get that double damage Stomping Tantrum in the second turn. And for our defensive tools, I decided to give Clodsire a Citrus Berry so that we can restore a fourth of our health whenever we get down to less than half of our health, and we're Ghost Terra mostly so that we can just dodge a fake out or maybe a normal type move with our Ghost Terra, but there's probably better Terras for Clodsire, I just couldn't think of any at the time. Next up, we got Skeledirge, and Skeledirge is nice because it has the Torch Song as a signature move, which allows it to raise a special attack by 1 every time it uses it, and we have the Throat Spray, which Torch Song is a sound-based move, which means that after we use Torch Song the first time, we'll be getting another special attack boost on top of that, so that we're at ×2 automatically, and we don't have an item, so we don't have to worry about knockoff or poltergeist or any of that jazz. And we do have Terra Normal on Skeledirge, mostly to avoid Rage Fist from Annihilates. But normal is just like a decent defensive type, since the only thing that it's weak to is fighting, and we have a good number of tools on this team to deal with fighting types, or at least the more popular fighting types. But also on Skeledirge, I decided to run the Flame Charge so that we could get a speed boost, and this is going to come in combination with Clefable, but also having a slightly speedier Skeledirge where we can take a turn just to Flame Charge if we're going to like break a Focus Sash, or if we need to not do a lot of damage into a Pokemon, having the Flame Charge is kind of nice, but it is a very, very niche move to be running on Skeledirge. And now we're going to talk about Clefable, and Clefable is going to be using Moonblast and Calm Mind in order to do a lot of offensive fairy-type damage, but we also have the option for the Psych Up. Since Skeledirge is going to be boosting a special attack fairly quickly, we can use the Psych Up with Clefable in order to copy that change. And even though we're running Dondozo Tatsugiri, we don't really have a way to copy the Psych Up from Dondozo Tatsugiri, but since we're unaware, we can also Psych Up other Dondozos to maybe help us in the Dondozo mirror. As well as the Toxic Spikes from Clodsire do help a lot in the Dondozo Tatsugiri mirror. But for a little bit of survivability, I decided to give the Clefable Leftovers so that I can restore HP over time, and with a Protect, we'll get some guaranteed leftover healing turns. And I decided to go Terra Grass on Clefable just because grass means that we're not getting put to sleep by Spore stuff. Next up, we got Dondozo, and Dondozo kind of feels like cheating on this team because it is an Unaware Mon, but Unaware is definitely not the signature thing that Dondozo does here. Kind of unlike the other 3 Unaware users that we have on this team.
But Dondozo is super reliable, and this isn't like a super offensive Dondozo. We're just running pretty basic Dondozo tools in the Wave Crash, but we also have the Order Up, and for the first time we are going to be using Stretchy Tatsugiri, which means that we're actually going to gain a speed boost every time that Dondozo goes for the Order Up. As well as Dondozo also has the Substitute, even though we don't have any form of HP recovery on Dondozo, using the Substitute in order to save ourselves from like status moves is kind of nice for one turn. And it is another way to mitigate damage, as if there's an attack that does like 20% to us, and then there's an attack that does like 50% to us, we can just use the Substitute in order to block a lot of damage there. And we are Clear Amulet on Dondozo so that we're not getting intimidated on Dozo, since we are Physical Dozo, and I decided to go Dragon Terra since Dragon gives us a lot of useful resistances, but it also powers up our Order Up, which we're going to need the power up since we're not boosting our attack in any way. And for our Tatsugiri, I decided to pick out a Focus Sash set, where we also have the option to take a turn to Nasty Plot in order to boost our special attack, which will combo with Clefable's Psych Up a little bit in case Dondozo goes down. But we just have two good stab moves in the Dragon Pulse and the Muddy Water, and we also have the Protect just to save Tatsugiri for a turn in case we think it's going to get focused down, and we're Focus Sash so that we're always getting off at least one attack, and we're Terra Steel just because Steel is a really nice defensive type on the Tatsugiri. And lastly, I decided to slot Lucario onto this team as I really wanted a fighting type. And we haven't gotten to use Lucario yet, and Lucario is nice because it has the Inner Focus ability, which means that we will not be getting faked out or flinched in any manner. And Lucario actually has a bit of a surprise element here, as most Lucario that you'll see are physical. However, you can just as easily justify running the special Lucarios, so we're going to be running a special Lucario with the Stab Aura Sphere and the Stab Flash Cannon, but we also have the Shadow Ball, which will coincide with our Ghost Terra that we're mostly just using to be a little bit defensive, but surprising Pokemon with super effective Ghost type damage and Terastallizing into a Ghost type is definitely very powerful. As well as we also have the coaching on Lucario, so we could lead something like Lucario Clodsire, and then we can side coaching the Clodsire, and if Lucario gets knocked out, we can then bring in Clefable in order to psych up those attack and defense boosts, and then it becomes really hard for the opponent to break us with physical attackers. But we could also just lead like Lucario Dondozo, and then Dondozo just protects for a turn as Lucario side coachings into it. And we're Choice Scarf just because we want to be locking in that one move with Lucario and then going super fast. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Alright, so first up we got a battle against a Fire, Water, Grass core, if you count Incineroar as the fire component, but it mostly seems like they want to do Trick Roomy things, as they have like the Porygon 2 and the King Gambit, and the Primarina can be pretty slow, so I decided to lead Lucario and Clodsire, since the only thing that they can keep themselves from getting poisoned with is Goldango and King Gambit. And since if Incineroar swaps out, it's going to get poisoned, but they immediately swap to Goldango, which is pretty nice for us, as I decided to Aura Sphere into Porygon 2, but it doesn't quite 2-hit KO it. They just Terra Blast into Clodsire, and Clodsire takes it pretty good, and we get up one layer of spikes, and Aura Sphere brings down Porygon 2, as they Shadow Ball into Lucario, but Lucario takes it pretty good, and Porygon Z recovers, but we Stomping Tantrum that slot in case Porygon did that, and with the Stomping Tantrum we do just enough damage to where the Aura Sphere picks up the next KO, and the Shadow Ball goes into the Clodsire, and I Poison Jab the Porygon just in case it teared into like something weird, but as you'll see, the opponent decides to forfeit. But since we have Dondozo and Tatsugiri in the back, I'm feeling pretty safe since we can just Dragon Terra our Dondozo to deal with most of the things that they can have in the back, since Incineroar's not going to really do anything since Dondozo is Clear Amulet, and Incineroar's going to get poisoned when it eventually swaps in. But yeah, the opponent just decided to hard quit off of a Lucario and a Clodsire lead, which is kind of funny when you think about it. Next up, we got a team that feels like mostly hyper offense, except for the Clefairy, who can save them with like follow me redirection stuff. So battle starts and they lead Dragapult and Basculegion, and I'm feeling pretty good about this since I led Lucario and Clodsire again, and Lucario has the Shadow Ball, so we decided to Shadow Ball into Basculegion, and that does a lot of good damage into it, and it would 2-code without the special defense drop anyways, but they flip turned out into their Goldango, who is another Pokemon that's weak to the Shadow Ball on Lucario, but Clodsire gets up its Toxic Spikes as we Shadow Ball into Dragapult, and that actually crits the Dragapult, which I'm not quite sure how much that matters here because of, again, Dondozo Tatsugiri in the background, but it does allow us to Stomping Tantrum the Goldango for a nice hit here as they bring in the Clefairy, and I protect Clodsire because I want to swap out Clodsire at the end of the turn, but we just get the Shadow Ball into Goldango here as the Clefairy decided to Moonblast, perhaps overprotecting a redirection, but the opponent decides to give up after that turn, so another win for just Lucario and Clodsire. Alright, here we have Mouse Archelodon, but they also have like the Alolan Ninetales, which can set up their screens for them, which can be kind of annoying if we want to do a lot of damage very quickly if they have the screens up. But they also have redirection in like the Amoonguss, and set up potential in the Saraledge and the Milotic for a lot of shenanigans. Can be kind of nasty if we weren't like basically entirely unaware on this team, so we don't really care about setup too much. The battle starts out, we do Lucario and Skeledirge this time as the opponent decides to lead Amoonguss and Archelodon. They immediately Terra Water their Amoonguss as I tried to Aura Sphere into Archelodon in order to do damage into it. And we Torch Song Amoonguss because we seem to be faster than Amoonguss, so we get off the Throat Spray at least. But they decide to put to sleep Skeledirge here as Amoonguss is going to protect. And we Aura Sphere Archelodon, which doesn't quite KO it, but it does enough damage to where it's basically going to get KO'd by anything else we hit it with. And the Archelodon reveals Earthquake, which means that I can actually do pretty good damage into both of our Mons here. We get an Aura Sphere into Amoonguss, but Amoonguss pretty much shrugs that off as the Archelodon goes for the Body Press, taking out Lucario, and Skeledirge is still asleep, so I decided to bring Tatsugiri in here. Since it has the Focus Sash, we can probably at least deal with the Archelodon, and we get Skeledirge to wake up, and it does enough damage to Amoonguss where I can 2-KO it, and the Amoonguss Sludge Bombs into Skeledirge, and they do get a poison onto us, which is kind of nice because they can't put us to sleep, but also the poison damage taking us down is just really inopportune because I wanted to slack off next turn, and we can't really reliably do that. I mean, we slack off anyways just to get health back, but we're pretty much back at the same place where we started. The opponent swaps in the Mousel here for Amoonguss as they Earthquake with Archelodon, and I Flame Charge into Archelodon in order to get the speed boost, and because I thought I was going to knock it out, but we don't get to knock out Archelodon here, and they taunt with Mouse Hold, which means that Skeledirge can't go for the Slack Off this turn in order to heal itself off, which is just... it's just too bad. I really want Skeledirge to take hold there, but now we get to form full Dondozo mode, and with Archelodon being pretty close to being taken out, we just get to order up into Mouse Hold, and if I had gone for the Dragon Terror there, we would have gotten to knock out Mouse Hold, but they taunt into Dondozo, or they taunted in Tatsugiri, I think, actually, but Dondozo is just building up those speed boosts so that we can nullify the paralysis, and after another order up and we KO the Mouse Hold, will probably be faster than everything that they have at the back of their team, and they paralyze the Dondozo so they can't put it to sleep with Amoonguss in order to deal with it, and they don't have Clear Smog on Amoonguss either in order to deal with Dozo, so Dozo just pretty safely cleans up this endgame. Here we've got a pretty unique spread of Mons. Like, all of these Mons, I don't think have any like notable synergy with each other. They're just all very good in each of their own rights and do very unique things. So the opponent leads Goldengo and Cleaver, and I decided to lead Lucario and Clodsire, and we Flash Cannon the Cleaver, but it's Sash, so it lives, the super effective Flash Cannon, and Cleaver at least gets up a Tailwind, as Goldengo decides to make it rain, and the Unaware is kind of being a double-edged sword here, because Clodsire is always going to take the same amount of damage. But they decide to do Stone Axe Clodsire, which means that we proc our Citrus Berry, and they Dazzling Gleam this time for whatever reason with the Goldengo, but we get to Flash Cannon crit down the Cleaver there as Clodsire gets the Stomping Tantrum damage into Goldengo, and now Ursaluna is going to come in, and Clodsire is going to protect this turn just so we can save Clodsire for a little bit longer as they decide to make it rain into Lucario, and Lucario gets a bit of Flash Cannon damage into Ursaluna, and Spadef drops it, which doesn't really help too much. I mean, it does mean that we can deal more Flash Cannon damage into the Ursaluna next turn, but the Goldengo full-on decides to make it rain, and that's going to be enough to pick off Lucario even with the special drops, and the Blood Moon is enough to pick off the Clodsire, meaning that we only have Dondozo and Tatsugiri in the back. However, we're probably faster than everything that they can have on the team at this point since their Tailwind has now been stalled out. And I decided to protect with Dondozo mostly because I want the Ursaluna to take some more poison chips, so that way whenever we Wave Crash it, we deal less Wave Crash recoil damage to ourselves, but it also means that Goldengo's leftovers is going to heal it for more over time, and they decide to swap Malamar here, and we just get to Wave Crash the Malamar for all of its health, as Goldengo goes for the Shadow Ball, and it does a decent amount of damage. Now they bring back in Ursaluna, and they decide to Terra Ground Ursaluna, as Dondozo's just going to take another Protect turn here, so that the Ursaluna takes more Poison Chip, as the Terra Ground Earth Power comes out, and we get to order up the Ursaluna, so that way we actually don't take any recoil there, and it does pick up KO, thankfully, as the Goldengo goes for another Shadow Ball, and now we can Wave Crash into Goldengo, and that just picks up a one-hit KO, but even if that did not manage to KO Goldengo, probably would not have killed us, which means that they would have had to attack into Dozo again, which means that Tatsugiri would keep its sash intact. But even if Tatsugiri didn't get to keep its sash, the Goldango has used Make It Rain like 3 times at that point, so its special attack is not very high. And I would be willing to bet that Tatsugiri could take an attack unless it crits us. But I mean, at that point, the game is just not in our favor. Next up, we got another unique spread of Mons, where it doesn't really feel like any of these Pokemon have synergy with each other, except for, like, Goodra doing Iron Defense Body Press endgame stuff, and Garganacl doing Salt Cure Stall stuff. But we lead Lucario and Skeledirge into their Barraskewda and the Ninetales, and I didn't want Skeledirge to take Water type damage here, so I swapped in Tatsugiri to resist it. And the Ninetales Terra Ghost in order to live the Lucario's attack, and they flip turn out into Garganacl as they set up the Aurora Veil here, and we Flash Cannon into Garganacl since it has to take the damage there, as they Moonblast into Lucario, and that deals quite a bit of damage from the Ninetales. But they Salt Cure into Lucario, and Lucario is a Steel type, so it's going to take a lot of Salt Cure damage, as the opponent decides to swap in Amoonguss for the Ninetales. But we Flash Cannon Amoonguss, and we Muddy Water both slots, but we don't get an attack drop, so Amoonguss and Garganacl both take at least some chip. And the Amoonguss is actually Black Sludge, which I didn't notice at the time, but it means Amoonguss can't Terra, but the Muddy Water comes out, and that KOs the Ninetales switch in, and Skeledirge is faster than the Garganacl, so we get to KO the Garganacl too, which allows us to get off our Throat Spray, and now it's Barraskewda and Amoonguss in the back. I'm going to have Skeledirge protect for this turn, since I figured a Water type move was going to be coming out into it, and it allows us to get Muddy Water Chip, or an Accuracy Drop would also be nice, but Amoonguss has Giga Drain, which is a little bit threatening, but now they're out of the snow, which means that we're closer to stalling out their Aurora Veil. And I decided to Terra Nova Skeledirge so that we can take the attack and then double into the Amoonguss in order to get rid of it here. And since Barraskewda is the last Pokemon on the field, and we still had, I believe, Clefable in the back, we could take down the Barraskewda. We have a team that actually does have a lot of synergies here, as they can do like Annihilate in order to get Annihilate set up with bulk ups, but again, all of our team is unaware, so we don't really care. And King Gambit can like set up with Swords Dance with Sinister supports, but we're unaware, so we don't care. And Blaziken could like side coaching a Pokemon in order to boost the attack and defense of the Pokemon, but again, we're unaware, so we don't care. So this battle starts out, we lead Clodsire and Lucario, and the opponent leads Blaziken and the Annihilate, and they decide to double protect this first turn, probably just so Blaziken can get a speed boost, but I Shadow Balled into Annihilate, hoping that it was going to be like Choice Scarf, and that we could be a faster Choice Scarf. But I decided to hit Blaziken this turn in order to just get rid of it, and they do the side coaching into Annihilate, and they bulk up with Annihilate, but we don't really care because we get to take out Blaziken here. And Annihilate, we can just kind of sit on this threat for a little bit, as long as there's nothing on this team that can proc its Rage Fist, and it doesn't seem like there's anything on this team that can proc its Rage Fist, but they Drain Punch into Lucario, and that's going to take it out, as Dragapult takes poison damage in the Void. And now we can get up the Dondozo Tatsugiri form, and even though Dondozo is gaining a speed boost, it's going to be slower than the Dragapult, and they attacked into the Tatsugiri slot, so we get the order up into Dragapult in order to KO it, and the Rage Fist comes out from Annihilate, and it only does 7%, so they reveal Sinistcha as their last Pokemon, and we substitute with Dondozo here, because I thought they might go for the Machigacha, or perhaps like set a Trick Room with Sinistcha, but they actually do the best thing for us, which was trying to go for Strength Step, and you can't Strength Step a substitute, so we're just stalling out the Sinistcha a little bit here, so it takes some more poison damage over time, and poison damage ticks down. I decided to go Terra Dragon here in order to make the most out of our Order Up damage, and the Annihilate goes for Rage Fist, but it doesn't break the sub, and the Sinistcha is just going for the Life Dew to try and heal the Annihilate, but we don't want to attack the Annihilate yet, because we really don't want to be proccing its Rage Fist, and the Drain Punch isn't even breaking our sub, and I'm just kind of stalling the Annihilate a little bit, because it's not like out of the question to try and protect out its Rage Fist, just in case the Dragon Order Up doesn't do like enough, but even with their Protect and Leftovers damage, the Terra Dragon Order Up is doing enough to where we can 2-hit KO the Annihilate, and the opponent would probably need to go for like a quad protect in order to live this turn, in order to get off the next Rage Fist, but Dondozo is going to take out Annihilate with the Order Up because we ignore all of its defense boost. Lastly, we have a game against a team that has a pretty offensive team core. as Volcarona, Garchomp, and Dragonite are all Pokemon that can easily like take the game away by just setting up with like Swords Dance or Quiver Dance. So the battle begins and they lead Volcarona and Garchomp as I lead Clodsire and Clefable because I really want Clefable to Moonblast into the Garchomp, but they correctly protect with Garchomp and just go for Terra Blast into Clodsire, which does do some chip to it, but I think it's going to put it in range of an Earthquake. So I protect Clodsire on the next turn, and what I was really hoping was going to happen was that Garchomp would swap out as Volcarona goes for a Quiver Dance, so I went for a Calm Mind here with Clefable, but the Earthquake does just too much to Clefable to where we can't really afford to take another Earthquake.
And because they decided to use their Terra Grass so early, Clodsire can probably just take the Earthquake after the Citrus Berry gets eaten, because if they decide to attack Clodsire again, it'll force it to eat Citrus Berry, which means it'll be at slightly higher health. But they just Heat Wave with the Volcarona, which does about the same damage as the Terra Blast did, and they decide to Rock Slide with Garchomp this time, perhaps not wanting to Earthquake their own Volcarona, as the Clodsire manages to get off the Poison Jab into Volcarona, knocking it out, so we've gotten rid of their Terra at least this game, but now they bring in the Whimsicott, who can just Encore us into not using Protect, as Garchomp is going to take us out with the Dragon Claw, and Clefable is now forced to Protect until the end of time, but now we bring in the Skeledirge, who can Terra Normal in front of the Garchomp to hopefully live the Earthquake, but they're just helping handing and Rock Sliding, maybe because they don't have Protect on their own Whimsicott, and they don't want to risk Earthquaking down their own Pokemon where they don't have to. But this allows Skeledirge to get off the Torch Song, so we get to activate our Throat Spray, and Whimsicott is ticking down from the poison damage. And since they're Rock Sliding, I figured I might as well swap in Lucario, as it also allows me to get rid of that nasty Encore on the Clefable. And with the Life Orb damage that Garchomp does to itself, and our 2x special attack boost on the Skeledirge, the Torch Song is able to KO Garchomp. And I go for a kind of a risky play here, where I decide to side coaching into the Skeledirge while also protecting so that Dragonite can hit us, but the Dragonite Dragon Dances, and this kind of allows me to swap in Clefable in order to catch the Encore, as they Dragon Claw into Skeledirge, but that isn't doing enough damage into Skeledirge to even 2-hit KO it from where it currently sits, and they Dragon Claw Skeledirge. Yeah, but Skeledirge lives and gets off the Slack Off, as Clefable is finally able to psych up something, so we get the awesome 3x special attack boost from Skeledirge, but also the defense boost, and we Torch Song just to break Dragonite's multi-scale if it managed to have it, but that doesn't look like multi-scale damage, as Moonblast is going to pick up KO into Dragonite here every time. So a little risky here. If they had decided to Encore Skeledirge on that one turn, it probably would still work out the same way, where I decide to bring in Clefable and then psych up with the Clefable, or I might Moonblast the Whimsicott before I psych up the Skeledirge, but psyching up the Skeledirge while Skeledirge is like Encored into Protect still probably means that like they can't use Dragonite to beat Clefable, and we still have Lucario in the back just to Flash Cannon into Dragonite for a little bit more damage. But yeah, that was the Unaware team, and obviously Unaware is such a good ability that I really think it does hold up an entire team just by running a team full of Unaware Pokemon, probably more so because we have Dondozo who can counter a lot of things. But since the meta right now is kind of focused on stat boosting, bringing a team of full Unaware Pokemon can really just throw a wrench in your opponent's plans. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video and even consider subscribing, because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.